what's good? We're back in this thing and we're back in Chicago. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably saw for the last week or so, I was in LA. I went out there to meet a few guys and actually ended up joining this team called Split Mind. It's a group of producers that kind of focus on artist development, and I joined as a creative director for them. So I'm going to be doing a lot of their content and helping them develop artists in a cool way. I posted a few videos while I was out there. One was a tutorial and one was just kind of like me making a beat with one of them. Actually, a friend that I've known for a really long time that is also part of the team. He signed as a producer. Yeah, so basically what we did is we just like made a beat and kind of just like ate some food, and I kind of did, it was a little vlog style too. I noticed not a lot of you guys clicked on that, probably because it's not a tutorial, but if you guys want to see like what the B&B was like, a little bit of LA and some behind the scenes stuff, definitely go watch that video. Give my other style content a try because I'm going to start slowly branching off of tutorials. Always going to be doing tutorials for a while, but just want to try out some new stuff, behind the scenes, all that other stuff. So I'll have that linked below. Today we're going to be going over the Bad Boy titles. It's probably one of my most requested videos. I said in my first Bad Boys video breakdown that if we got to 300 likes, I would do a tutorial on the titles, and we hit that when I was in LA. So we're going to be going over the titles. I got the sauce. There's like 3 different techniques that Cole uses in the titles. So I'm going to be breaking down all 3 of those. I know the most requested one's probably where like the text kind of grows at you and it's almost like 3D. So we'll definitely be going over that, and then just a few other techniques that he used through it. If you're new here, what I do is a lot of tutorials, behind the scenes, a lot of just content focused around music videos and just creative stuff in the hip hop scene. So if this is your first video, be sure to subscribe. Also, let's get another 300 likes on this video. Take a second, go hit the like button, leave a comment. It really does help push my content to other music video editors, directors, and people that want to see this content, and it helps the community grow as a whole. I'm really trying to build a platform for a lot of music video editors, directors, so they can kind of share their own work. I've been doing Twitch streams every Friday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'll have the link below for that. It's just a cool way for us to see each other's work. I'm working on getting a Discord. I answer like all my DMs on Instagram. So if you ever have a question or just like want to show me your work, feel free to hit me there. One last thing before we get into the video, if you want to support the channel even more, you can go over to briandalmata.com and check out my texture pack. It's a great way to support the channel and go take the extra step and also get a really cool product in return. It really helps you get that OG Lone Wolf style paper rip transitions. I'll have a playlist link below with all the tutorials that I've done so far on it. I'll also have the link to the website below. But yeah, guys, that's enough talking. Let's get into the video and actually make this title sequence. So for all the effects besides the 3D one, you can actually use Photoshop or Premiere. I'm going to be using After Effects for all 3 just to keep it all in the same program, and I think it's a little bit easier to just use After Effects for these transitions and titles. So first thing I'm going to do is just create a new composition. Just make it whatever size your actual project is. 1920 by 1080 is good for my case, and 24 frames per second is perfect. The first effect we're going to start off with here is just this directed by Cole Bennett, where the Cole Bennett's changing and zooming in. Really simple effect we can do, and I think it looks pretty cool. So first I'm just going to go to the text tool over here and type in directed by, and that font is a little crazy, so we can just do something a little bit more simplistic. He had a little bit of a crooked font. I'm going to have a link to defont.com. It's where I got all my fonts. They're all free, and I know Cole got a decent amount of his fonts off the website, if not all of them, because I wasn't even trying to find his fonts, but I was just going through the website and seeing ones that I saw him use in the title sequence. So I'm sure if you spend enough time, you could probably get all the fonts he was using. I downloaded 17 fonts from the website, so I'll have links to all of those below, as well as the website where you can just find your own. I'd recommend finding your own because then yours looks unique. But for this, I think I'm just going to follow his steps and kind of do a crooked one. So I think if I type in crooked here and then making them all capitalized here, and then making it a lot smaller, maybe something like 100 for right now. I'm also going to go down here and click proportional grid. That way you can just see it lined up on a grid, so you can center it and stuff and make it look easy. Because we're not going to worry about it being too perfectly centered, but just want it to be a little centered. So what I'm doing is I'm just lining up the red dots, which is the center of the text, with the center of this bar here, and having it a little bit above this middle green bar, because that's where I'm going to have the top of all the other text. And then what I'm going to do is just duplicate the directed by and drag it down and type in Brian Dalmata. And I'm gonna make this one 100, just making it a little bit bigger. I'm not sure if that's exactly what he did, but that's what I want mine to be. I just want my name to be a little bit bigger than the directed. And then I'm also gonna go through and click the directed by and just change that to white. That way, directed by is in white, and then my name is in red. And I just noticed this is a little big, so I'm just going to start these off a little bit smaller. Maybe have directed by at 50 and then my name at 75. It's all about playing around and seeing what looks good to you. So just keep that in mind. Again, just centering the text and centering this text, even though I'm going to go ahead and change it. Actually, for the first one, I'm just going to keep it this because I'm just showing you guys how to do it. I don't want, it doesn't really matter exactly what it looks like. I just want to show you guys the concept behind this. So then I'm just going to go 2 frames forward, go to preview, 1, 2, Control Shift D on the Brian Dalmata text. And then I'm just going to double click this, and then you can choose any font you want. And then I'm also just going to duplicate the original Brian Dalmata font and drag it all the way out. And this is just going to be so I can line it up. We're going to turn this off later. I'm going to press T and make the opacity something like 50. That way, when you go here, you can see where your previous layer was or where the first one was. So you can kind of just line it up a little bit better. I'm going to make sure that all the fonts start at roughly at the top of this. And then I'm just going to be using the tracking to make it a little bit wider. So it's almost like the exact same size as the first font. I think that's just going to sell the effect a little bit more and make it look good. And then I'm going to go 2 frames, 1, 2, Control Shift D, split that. And then I'm just going to drag this to the bottom so it doesn't get confusing. Then we can choose another font. To make it easy, I just have the folder of all the fonts I downloaded over here. So I'm just looking at the names and we can just go ahead and choose different ones. We're going to use Dr. Punk here, Dr. Punk. And then again, just spacing them out a little bit more so they all fit. Because if you change the size, the height's going to be all messed up. And I think it's just better that they're spaced out like this. And then 1, 2, Control Shift D to split it. And then again, just choosing a new font. Black Spiral seems good to me. And then obviously this one's way too spread out. So we're just going to go here and change it to fit. Move it there. And then 1, 2, split. I'm just going to play it through and just see what this looks like just to make sure we're not super far away from what we want it to look like. And it is going to look a little weird at first just because it's only 4 different fonts and it's only 2 frames each. But when you have the zooming in added on with it and, once you get more fonts also, it will look a little bit better. So we're going to go ahead and change this next font. I'm going to use this font called Dot Impact. Also, being sure to turn back on that opacity layer. That way we can match these up pretty easily. And this is just the best way I found. Obviously, there are probably plenty of different ways on how to do this effect. So don't just because I'm doing it, don't just copy it exactly. If you see a different way of doing it, then definitely have your own twist on it and do it that way. What I'm doing here is I'm just realigning the top with this green bar just so it looks a little bit better. And then since I moved it, I created a new 50% opacity one so we can see better. 2 frames, Control Shift D. I'm going to be using this one called Metropolitan. For this one, I think we can change the height of it a little bit so it matches better. Basically, I think just matching it as close to previous one or all the other ones, it just makes it look a little bit better. You don't have to. You could have it be different sizes and stuff. That's just what I found. I played with it a little bit before I started doing a tutorial, and that's what I thought looked the best. But obviously, just do whatever you want. I'm going to use this one called Lake Street. 1, 2, Control Shift D, another font. And this is a cool effect because you can find a bunch of fonts in a similar theme and use these. I'm just using a bunch of random ones. I think this still looks cool, but if you wanted to keep a theme or whatever, you could easily do that. I'm going to use this one called Dirty Ego. I'm going to do 10 different fonts. I think that's a pretty good number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we need one more. 2, Control Shift D. And then we can use that one. And then I'm going to split it after 2 frames. Be sure to delete that 50% opacity one. And then you can see you could go through and tweak any of this if you wanted it to line up a little bit better. I noticed some of the ones like the E Dalmata is like over to the right of the line. It doesn't really bother me too much. I think if I turn this off, it will look good. Yeah, that looks good to me. And then I'm just going to Control Shift D and split the directed by right there. So it's the same length as the other font. And then I'm going to click N on my keyboard to end the composition to bring the timeline in, and then just drag it so it fits perfectly. Right click and trim comp to work area. And that way the composition is the exact length of the text effect. And I'm going to rename this composition just directed by. That way you can easily sort out which composition is which, because we're going to be making a new composition. I'm just going to make this one the intro titles. So this is going to be the overall composition that we drag everything into. So I'm just going to drag directed by into it. And there you see we have the effect pretty much. What we can go ahead and do is keyframe the scale and then go to the end. I'm just going to go to 1 frame before the end so I can see how much I zoom it in. And I think something like that looks pretty good. And then I just drag that keyframe to the last frame. And then all depending what you want the focus of the zoom to be, you could even keyframe the position so it zooms in and It's focus on directed by. And then you can see it kind of has that almost swoop animation there. You can do a bunch of different things. I'm just going to keep it default and just kind of zoom in the center of the clip. I think that looks cool. Maybe make it a little bit less aggressive, like 150, and then be sure to drag that to the last frame. You can go ahead and add motion blur too. So if you wanted to, when it's zooming in, it could be blurred, so it kind of looks like it's moving in actually. I don't know if Cole did that, but I always think that's a cool thing you can do. If you go to advanced, you can change shutter angle to like something like 180 and like shutter phase to something like 180. That's going to give you a little bit of blur, but not too much. The higher you go on shutter angle, the more motion blur you will have. So just keep that in mind. I think that looks pretty cool. It's just a little bit of motion blur and kind of makes it look a little bit realistic, I guess. All right, the next effect we're going to be going over is this. You guys might not even notice this happened, but where it says bad boy here, the clip is actually shaking each time bad boy comes up, and he's not having it exactly center each time. Just keep that in mind. We can go ahead and do that. That's a pretty simple one. New composition. We're just going to have this one called Juice WRLD, because instead of bad boy, we're just going to have it say Juice WRLD. Go ahead and type in Juice WRLD. We can make this one a little bit bigger, maybe like 125. And we're going to turn back on those proportional grids. That way we can see. And if you ever don't see your timeline or anything, it's because you have caps lock enabled. So just turn off caps lock and you should be able to see it. And for this one, I'm going to keep it in the center pretty much. And we can make this one, make sure to turn that motion blur. And we can actually just go 1, 2, 3. We can do 3 frames this time. I think that looks pretty good. And then I'm just going to split it and then go to transform, position, keyframe it at the start, and then go right before the last frame so we can see what we're doing, and just drag it. Actually, for the first one, we're going to drag up a little bit, and then we're going to change it to drag down. And then if you turn off that layer right there, it's a little bit much actually. It is going to look weird at first because you are just moving one frame, but once you have them all together, it will look better. I think actually add a little bit more. It's all about just tweaking it to whatever you like. And then for this composition setting, since I want the blur to be a little bit more aggressive, we're going to do 720, and that's going to affect just this composition. So if we go into the other compositions and go to composition settings, it will still have that 180 shutter angle. That's why we work in bunch of different compositions to make it easier that way. And then we can go here, go to the next 3 frames, and we can do a different fonts. I'm going to be using the same fonts that we had before just to save time, but obviously do whatever you want. You can line them all up in the center, or you can have them out of the center. Cole did a mixture of both. Transform again. For this time, I'm going to actually move it down. And then again, 1, 2, 3, Control Shift D. Just make sure you use a bunch of different fonts. Dr. Punk. And one thing I noticed he does is sometimes he has one word be one font and then one be another. So you could just change that to make it look a little bit different. And this one I'm going to have a little bit off-centered. Maybe have world centered. I don't know how this is going to look. We might have to tweak this, but just trying out some new stuff. Keyframe the position and just have it go down, just like all the other ones. Make sure to drag that keyframe to the last frame. 1, 2, 3, Control Shift D. And if you wanted to, you can go into Photoshop and tweak these and export them as PNGs. I noticed a few of his maybe looked like he tweaked something in Photoshop. Like there's a few that doesn't look like it's just like a straight up font. It looks like he maybe this one, I'm assuming this one's probably not just one basic font. It looks like 2 different fonts and then some drawings around it. So you can go into Photoshop, use a brush or something, export as a PNG, and then do the same concept. So just keep that in mind. I'm just showing you the concept of it. Obviously, he spent a lot of time on all of these. Like this one looks like it's almost like a mixture of 3 different fonts. This is actually a font that we downloaded. It's called Black Spiral. I'm imagining he just inverted it. So yeah, there's a bunch of different cool things you can do. We're going to be going over this effect next. Do that crooked one. You might have to rescale some of these. If you want to save some time, you can use P for position to keyframe them. And again, just dragging down. 1, 2, 3. This one seems like one you can change the size or the scale of the font a lot more. And you can even play with it. Like you could probably rotate it or like squeeze it or make it like larger. I think obviously making it your own is cool. Again, just moving the position. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Probably need to do 9 of these or 10, whatever I feel is enough. Again, probably going to be using the same fonts over and over again. It's not a bad thing. I'm just, if I were to do it in one of my projects, though, I'd probably use a bunch of unique ones and then maybe have one that like means something to the project or whatever, used multiple times. But for right now, I'm just showing you guys the concept, obviously. So just having these tweaked a little bit. And if you want, you can have, a few move more than others, or you can have them all exactly the same movement. Like you could see how much you move from the first one to the second one. So for example, here I went from 612, 632. So obviously that's a 20 frame jump or whatever. So you could just do 20 pixels each time. I'm not too worried about it being exactly perfect. So we're just gonna move it however much we feel. Oh, this is a pretty cool one. I actually had this one move up instead of down just to change it up a little bit. And then I'm probably gonna have the last one move up as well. 1, 2, 3, Control Shift D here. I'm gonna delete that to make sure I know that this is the last one. And then Facebook here, click P, do the position thing. And then again, clicking N, dragging it so it's fits perfectly. Right click, trim comp, and then we can see what ours looks like. So I think that looks pretty cool. It's a pretty similar effect to what he did. You know, if you don't like the jumping to the left or whatever, you can obviously change that or whatever. I just think it's a cool jitter. You can spend as much time as you want tweaking it. I'm just showing you guys the concept, obviously. And then we can go into intro titles, go and drag in Juice WRLD, and then just line it up with the last one here. The last effect we're going to be going over is this like 3D, after he has like Young Thug or Juice WRLD or the song name come up, he normally has this red and white font come here, and the white is like 2D and then the red is 3D is the best way I can describe it. And I think it looks better if you have some of the red on the left and on the right and in the middle. That way you can show it's 3D a lot easier. He does have one where Bad Boy is on the left hand side and you can still see it's 3D. So it doesn't really matter, but I just think it looks better when it's in the middle. This one looks crazy because the juice is over and then the thing wraps around the world. I don't know what font that is, but I will show you guys how to do the 3D effect. So what we're gonna do is just go and make a new composition. We're gonna call this one 3D and then just Juice WRLD. And then again, just make something say Juice WRLD, and we can use a better font. The fonts that look the best, in my opinion, are the ones that are not 100% opaque, so it has like these lines or like distortions or rough edges or something. That way you can kind of see when it goes 3D, like gaps between it and stuff. That's just my opinion, so you don't have to do that, but I would find a font like that if you want the effect to look the best. And then I'm just lining this up dead center. The font I'm using is called Astigma. I'll have that link below, as well as the website where you can find all your different fonts. So there's plenty of different fonts you can do with this. I'm gonna make this effect 20 frames, so I'm just gonna go here, Control Shift D, click End, so we can make the composition the exact size by trimming to comp size again. That way we just have the effect last. And then this is the weird part, because I don't know exactly how to describe this. There's probably a better way, but I haven't found it out yet. So if you know how to do this in a better way, let me know in the comments. You might think you know a solution right away because it deals with 3D and there being two different styles of 3D. It's just a little bit weird. So what I do is I just have the Juice WRLD be completely typed out, and then I duplicate the layer and turn this one to white, and then I'm gonna go ahead and literally delete each layer or each letter and go one by one. So instead of there, we'll go U and then line it up as best as possible, duplicate the layer, make it an I, drag it over. Again, like I said, I thought I knew the solution to this right off the bat, but it's actually a little bit more complex because the white layers are gonna be like flat and then the red layer is gonna be 3D, so it's a little bit weird. I think this way just involves less thinking, I guess. I'm sure there's other ways you can do this and still have it look good. It's really not that much extra work. It's just basically how long the word is. Like, this is actually a pretty long word, Juice WRLD, so. And it doesn't have to be lined up perfectly. You're not gonna be able to notice when the actual effect's going on. I'm gonna turn off the bottom layer. It's actually not needed anymore. And then I'm just gonna go through and choose which ones I want to be red or the 3D ones. Obviously, you can make it whatever color, and you can make them both 3D, either or. To make it easy for you guys to understand, I'm gonna do what Cole did and have the red ones be the 3D layer. So I'm gonna go ahead and change the J to red, I to red. And if you want it to be easy, just have these two different colors be white and red. So you can just click that swap button. I'm gonna do the C red, and then the R and D to red. I didn't really follow any specific pattern, just ones that I thought would look cool being red. And then you don't have to make them all 3D, but I'm going to make them all 3D because it kind of changes the style of the font when you do. So it has it be blended, and I want them to all look the same anyways. So I just made these all 3D. If you don't see that option with that cube, just click toggle switches and modes until you see this pop up here. And then what I'm going to do is go to this J here and go to geometry options, keyframe the extrusion depth, and then go to the end and drag it to something like maybe like 150. And you can see it, you're not going to be able to really notice what it does right away. It kind of just has it look like it's a little bit more botchy right now. But what you can do is go to this thing right here where it says active camera and go to top. And what you're going to see is this is looking at it from above now. So this is the only one that actually looks 3D because all the other ones are just on this plane right here in the middle. So you can see that this actually is now a 3D object. So the J is now thick if you were to walk behind it. Thick. And then I'm going to go to the transform as well and keyframe the position and have the position go to the front to be default, and then go to where you keyframed the depth. I'm going to bring it up so it's exactly on this line. So instead of going back, what it's going to do is it's just going to grow forward pretty much, because we kept the position the same spot, but not really. We're keeping, because the position's going off the front of the letter, but we want the back to stay the same, so it kind of goes out at the camera. And then we're just going to drag these to the last frame, and then I'm going to highlight the keyframes for all these, and then go to the front and make sure you're at the first frame where the keyframe started for each of them. And then I'm just going to line these up again. And then to make it super easy to understand, I'm just going to go through manually keyframe the extrusion. I realize that it's kind of hard to copy and paste the keyframes of these because it's just easier to mess up. So I'm just going to go ahead and manually do it. It's really not that hard, especially since there's only a certain amount of letters. And then drag here and go to the end. And they don't even all have to line up perfectly. It don't matter too much. It's just you won't even be able to notice at the end. So I wouldn't worry too much about getting it exactly perfect. The C, go ahead and do the R. Again, extrusion depth, keyframe to 0, bring it to the front, and then 150. The only thing that really matters is they both are going to be about the same extrusion depth, and the position will pretty much be the same. That's all that really matters. It might actually look cool if they're all like extruding at a different depth anyways, so it's not too much of an issue. I just toggle between the top view and the active camera just so I can see which letter is actually read, and then the top view just to line them up all. And like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can see that mine are pretty off. But yeah, it don't matter too much. And then now we can go to the active camera and kind of see what happens. And you can already see something's happening. Obviously, it looks a little weird, and it's already starting to do that effect a little bit. You can go down here, right click, and create a new camera. And then I just drag it to the top. That's what I always do. I don't know if it really matters, but that's what I do. And then go to position. And I'm just going to go to the last frame before I start moving it in. And then I'm just going to zoom in. So basically what this is doing is just making it look like the camera is getting closer to the objects. And you can see that it has that 3D effect that the video has. It's all going to depend on what fonts you use, how much you have it extrude, how much you have the camera come close to you, if it's like off to the left or off to the right. It's all about perspective, so you can spend as much time as you want tweaking that. Like obviously this J is going to look different than the C, because if you're looking at it as a camera, the C's over here and the J's over here and the C's here. So when you're getting closer to it, obviously there's going to be a different perspective. So keep that in mind. Like I said, the ones with the rougher edges or where you can see the gaps, I think look better. This isn't the best example of one. I still think you're able to understand what's going on here. What you could even do is you could angle one of the letters. For example, like the C, you can go to transform and play with the rotation of it. So if you wanted it to, you could have it like swiveled a little bit. And then you can see how that expands a little bit differently. You could even keyframe them so they expand a little bit different, so like it tilts while it's going. I'm sure Cole did a little bit of that just to tweak it to make it look a little bit better. It's hard to really tell because it's technically being a 3D layer, but it doesn't have any lighting or like any of the material options on it. So it's basically, it looks like a 2D object, but it's actually 3D, so it's thicker. Since there's no lighting, you can't tell the difference between the start of the J and the end of the J. If you guys want a tutorial on like stuff like that, where you can have reflections and kind of, you can obviously tell it's 3D, we could do something like that. For this effect, this is what he did. So I'm just going to show you that. And then we can drag the 3D juice in here, and we can kind of see we have a very similar effect to what Cole had in his video. Some cool things that you could add to the title sequence is maybe like some grain. I know he likes adding grain onto a lot of his things. I don't think he did in this title sequence, but I think it just looks cool. I like using add grain. In my opinion, it looks the best, but it is definitely the most intensive. I think it adds a cool little effect to it. I just did something like 5 and then use the Kodak T200. I'm just going to copy and paste that through all the compositions. It's really not going to add too much of a noticeable difference, but I think it just adds a little bit of texture and keeps it away from that just like basic looking font. I think that's one thing that really helps you make new and cool creative titles, is just adding texture to it, because I see a lot of people add just basic titles and then it ends up not looking that good. Definitely not something needed in this one because we already added so much to the titles, but I think it's pretty cool. Alright guys, that's pretty much it for the video. If you made it all the way to the end, I really do appreciate you. If you haven't already, go ahead and like and comment, because it does help push this content to people that want to see it. And it really does help me grow the community, and in return, I can make a lot more videos like this for you guys, so we can grow as a community as a whole. If you want to support the channel even more, you can go over to briandalmada.com and check out my texture pack. It helps you get that OG, lone wolf kind of paper rip style transitions and effects. I have a playlist on my YouTube channel, and I'll have it linked below with all of the effects that you can do that I have tutorials on so far. I really hope you guys did enjoy. This was a really requested video. I know a lot of people have been using the black bar effect that Cole did in his recent videos, so just keep that in mind. Cole is definitely a big inspiration in a lot of people's videos. So now that I have this title sequence out, just because you do it in your video doesn't mean that your video is going to be like Cole's. And I feel like now that this is out, there's going to be a decent amount of people doing this title sequence, because there's already people doing the black bars and just other effects done in the Bad Boys music video. So keep that in mind. I just wanted to show you guys how to do it. Doesn't mean now that you know how to do it, you have to do this exact title sequence. With that being said, I do have a tutorial on the black bar effect, a few other of the main effects in the Bad Boys music video. So if you haven't seen those already, I'll have a link to those in the description as well. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it for the video. Peace.